Elliot's heart stopped when he saw the envelope. Its edges yellowed, tucked beneath his grandfather's favorite armchair. The room smelled of dust and betrayal, the kind that lingers when family turns to strangers. He hadn't been back to this house in years, not since his parents had locked him out, their voices dripping with venom over who he loved. The small town of Willow Creek, Oregon, hadn't changed much in a decade. Same weathered barns, same cracked sidewalks, same whispers trailing Elliot as he walked through the grocery store. He'd left at 18, fleeing the suffocating weight of his parents' expectations, their church's judgment, and the ache of being told his love for Sam was a sin. But Grandpa Joe had been his anchor, his quiet, stubborn defender. Now, Grandpa was gone, and the house that once felt like home was a battlefield. Elliot knelt, his fingers trembling as he pulled the envelope free. It was heavy, sealed with wax, his name scrawled in Grandpa Joe's shaky handwriting. Sam, standing by the door, watched him with those steady brown eyes that always calmed Elliot's storms. "You okay?" Sam asked, his voice low, like he knew the answer but needed to say it anyway. "I don't know," Elliot whispered, tearing the envelope open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a will, and a letter. The will was simple. Everything Grandpa Joe owned, his house, his savings, his land, went to Elliot. All $1. $2 million of it. But the letter was a bomb. "Elliot, my boy," it began. "Your parents took every dime I had, promising to care for me. They lied. They locked me away, kept me from you, and spent my money on their own lives. This will is my truth. Use it to find yours." Elliot's breath caught. His parents, Margaret and Paul, had told him Grandpa Joe was too sick to see him, too frail to leave the house. They'd said they were caring for him, that they'd spent every penny on his medical bills. But the will told a different story, one of greed, neglect, and a calculated effort to erase Elliot from his grandfather's life. "They stole from him," Elliot said, his voice breaking. Sam crossed the room in 2 strides, kneeling beside him. "We'll figure this out," Sam said, his hand firm on Elliot's shoulder. "Together." But together was a fragile word in Willow Creek. Elliot and Sam had built a life in Portland, where no one cared who they loved. Here, in this town of 3,000, their love was a scandal, a reason for Margaret to clutch her Bible tighter and Paul to spit words like abomination. And now, with $1, $2 million at stake, Elliot knew his parents wouldn't let go without a fight. The next morning, Elliot drove to the county courthouse, the will clutched in his hand. The air was crisp, the sky a bruised gray. Sam sat beside him, scrolling through his phone, looking for legal advice. "There's a lawyer in town who handles estate disputes," Sam said. "Clara Henshaw. She's tough, but fair." Elliot nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He remembered the summers spent with Grandpa Joe, fishing at the creek, the old man's laughter filling the air. Joe had never judged him, never flinched when Elliot came out at 16. "Love's love," Joe had said, handing him a root beer. "Anyone who says different is just scared of their own heart." The courthouse was a squat brick building, its walls lined with portraits of stern-faced judges. Clara Henshaw's office was on the 2nd floor, cluttered with books and files. She was in her 60s, with sharp blue eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "So," she said, scanning the will, "your parents claim they spent this money on your grandfather's care. Any proof?" Elliot shook his head. "They kept me away. I didn't even know he was in a nursing home until he was already gone." Clara leaned back, her chair creaking. "This is a mess. Your parents filed a counterclaim, saying they're entitled to the estate because they were his caregivers. They've got receipts. medical bills, the works. But this letter, she tapped Grandpa Joe's handwriting. This changes things. It's evidence of fraud. Maybe even elder abuse. Elliot's stomach twisted. Elder abuse. The words felt like a punch. He'd spent years hating himself for not fighting harder to see Grandpa Joe, for believing his parents' lies. Now, the truth was uglier than he'd imagined. We need to dig deeper, Clara said. Bank records, nursing home reports, witness statements. If your parents misspent that money, we'll prove it. But it won't be easy. They've got the town on their side. Elliot glanced at Sam, who gave him a small, determined nod. They'd faced worse than a small town's judgment. But as they left Clara's office, Elliot's phone buzzed. A text from his mother. Come to the house. We need to talk. The drive to his parents' house was silent, the weight of the past pressing down on them. Margaret and Paul lived in a pristine colonial on the edge of town, its white picket fence a lie of perfection. When Elliot knocked, Margaret opened the door, her face a mask of cold fury. You think you can waltz back here and take everything? She said, her voice low and venomous. That money was for us. We earned it. Elliot's grip tightened on the will. You earned it by lying to Grandpa, by keeping him from me. Paul stepped into the hallway, his broad shoulders filling the space. You don't get to judge us. Boy, you left. You chose him. His eyes flicked to Sam, dripping with disdain. Sam stepped forward, his voice steady. This isn't about us. It's about what you did to Joe. Margaret's lips curled. You'll regret dragging this through the courts. This town knows who you are. Elliot. They know what you are. The words cut, but Elliot stood taller. I'm his grandson, and I'm going to make sure his truth comes out. As they walked back to the car, Sam took Elliot's hand, squeezing it gently. We're doing this for Joe, he said, and for you. Elliot nodded, but the weight of his parents' words lingered. This wasn't just about money. It was about family, love, and the sins buried under years of lies. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over Willow Creek, Elliot knew the fight was just beginning. The next week was a blur of paperwork and whispers. Elliot and Sam set up camp in Grandpa Joe's old house. The creaky floors and faded wallpaper a constant reminder of the man who'd raised Elliot to be brave. Every night, Elliot read the letter again, tracing his grandfather's words, searching for strength. Clara Henshaw was relentless. She subpoenaed bank records, nursing home logs, and even the pharmacy receipts Margaret and Paul had submitted as proof of their care. The deeper she dug, the uglier it got. The nursing home, a grim facility on the outskirts of Willow Creek, had billed Grandpa Joe's account for premium care private rooms, specialized therapy he'd never received. Instead, he'd been left in a shared ward, barely visited, his meals cold and his clothes unchanged. They pocketed the difference, Clara said, slamming a stack of documents on her desk. Your parents billed Joe's estate for $1. $2 million over 3 years. But the nursing home only got a fraction. The rest went to their mortgage, a new car, even a vacation to Florida. Elliot's jaw clenched. He could picture his mother's smug smile, his father's self-righteous nod, as they justified their greed. Can we prove it? He asked. Clara smirked. Oh, we're close. I've got a contact at the bank who's pulling transaction records. But we need someone from the nursing home to talk. Someone who saw what really happened. That someone turned out to be Maria, a nurse who'd worked at Willow Creek Care Center for a decade. She was in her 40s, with tired eyes and a quiet strength. She met Elliot and Sam at a diner outside town, her hands fidgeting with a napkin. I shouldn't be here, she said, glancing over her shoulder. Your parents, they've got pull in this town. What did you see? Elliot asked, leaning forward. Maria sighed. Joe was a sweet man. Always talking about you. Elliot. He'd show me pictures of you fishing together. Said you were his pride. But your parents, they barely came. Maybe once a month. If that. They'd bring papers for him to sign. And he'd get so upset. Said they were taking everything. Elliot's chest tightened. Did he say what they were doing? He said they were draining his accounts. He tried to tell the staff, but no one listened. Your mom Margaret charmed the director. Bring him gift baskets. They believed her over Joe. Sam reached for Elliot's hand under the table, his touch grounding. Did anyone else see this? Sam asked. Maria nodded. A few aides. But they're scared. The director's tight with your parents. If I talk, I could lose my job. Elliot leaned closer, his voice soft but firm. Maria, my grandfather trusted you. I'm asking you to help us make this right. She hesitated, then nodded. I'll testify. For Joe. Back at the house, Elliot couldn't sleep. He sat on the porch, the night air cool against his skin, staring at the stars. Sam joined him, a blanket draped over his shoulders. You're carrying too much, Sam said, sitting beside him. This isn't just about the money, is it? Elliot shook his head. It's about them. They didn't just steal from Grandpa. They stole my family. They made me feel like I didn't belong. Sam's hand found his, warm and steady. You belong with me. And Joe knew that. That's why he left you everything. Elliot's eyes burned with tears. He leaned into Sam, letting the weight of the day fall away. For a moment, it was just them, two men holding on to each other in a world that hadn't always been kind. But the peace didn't last. The next morning, a brick crashed through the living room window, shattering glass across the floor. A note was tied to it, scrawled in angry red ink, leave or regret it. Elliot's hands shook as he picked up the note. Sam was already on the phone with the sheriff. But Elliot knew the truth. Willow Creek was closing ranks. His parents had allies. People who'd rather see Elliot and Sam run out of town than face the truth about Margaret and Paul's sins. We're not leaving, Sam said, his voice fierce. They don't get to win. Elliot nodded. But fear gnawed at him. This wasn't just a legal battle anymore. It was personal, and the town was watching. The sheriff's visit was a formality. He took the brick, bagged the note, and promised to look into it. But his eyes avoided Elliot's. He was one of Paul's old fishing buddies, a fact he didn't bother to hide. Probably just kids, he said, shrugging. You know how it gets around here. Elliot didn't buy it. Neither did Sam. As the sheriff's cruiser pulled away, Sam started boarding up the broken window, his movements sharp with frustration. They're circling us, he said. Your parents are playing dirty. Elliot paced the living room, the will still clutched in his hand. They're scared, he said. They know we're close to exposing them. Clara called that afternoon with news. We've got the bank records, she said. Your parents funneled Joe's money through a shell account. It's sloppy amateur fraud. But we need more witnesses to tie it to neglect. Maria's testimony is a start. But we need someone higher up. Elliot's mind raced. The nursing home director, Richard Vance, was the key. He'd signed off on the inflated bills, turned a blind eye to Grandpa Joe's condition. But getting him to talk would be like pulling teeth from a lion. Sam had an idea. What if we go to the nursing home? Talk to the staff. See who else might come forward. It was a risk, but Elliot agreed. They drove to Willow Creek Care Center that evening. the building looming like a gray ghost against the darkening sky. The receptionist, a young woman named Tara, recognized Elliot immediately. "You're Joe's grandson," she said, her voice soft. "He talked about you all the time." Elliot's throat tightened. "Can we talk to some of the staff? Anyone who knew him?" Tara hesitated, glancing at the security camera above. "Mr. Vance doesn't like visitors poking around. But I'll get you in. Joe was kind to me." She led them to a break room where a few aides were finishing their shifts. One of them, an older man named Carl, lit up when he saw Elliot. "You look just like him," he said, shaking his head. "Joe was so proud of you. Kept saying you'd do right by him." "Did you see my parents here?" Elliot asked. Carl's face darkened. "Yeah. They'd come in, all smiles, talking about how they were taking care of Joe. But he was in bad shape. Bed sores. Thin as a rail. We tried to help, but Vance told us to keep quiet. Said it was family business." Sam leaned forward. "Did Vance know about the money?" Carl nodded. "He got a cut. I overheard him once, talking to your mom about discretionary funds. Made me sick." Elliot's hands balled into fists. "Will you testify?" Carl hesitated, his eyes darting to the door. "I've got a family. Kid. Vance has connections. But I'll think about it." As they left, Tara slipped Elliot a piece of paper. "Joe gave me this," she whispered. "Said to keep it safe." It was a photo of Elliot and Grandpa Joe, laughing by the creek, with a note on the back, "My boy deserves the truth." That night, Elliot couldn't shake the image of his grandfather, alone in that sterile room, betrayed by the people he trusted. He sat at the kitchen table, the photo in front of him, Sam's hand on his shoulder. "We're going to win this," Sam said. For him. But the next day brought a new blow. Clara called, her voice grim. "Your parents filed an injunction to freeze the estate. They're claiming you coerced Joe into changing his will. They've got a witness, a pastor from their church, who says Joe was confused in his final days." Elliot's blood ran cold. "That's a lie." "I know," Clara said. "But it's their word against yours. We need to prove Joe was of sound mind when he wrote that will. And we need it fast." The weight of it all pressed down on Elliot, his parents' lies, the town's hostility, the fear that they might win. But Sam's voice cut through the noise. "We're not giving up," he said, his eyes fierce. "Let's find someone who saw Joe at the end. Someone who can vouch for him." Elliot nodded, clinging to Sam's strength. The fight was far from over, and the truth was their only weapon. Elliot and Sam spent the next morning combing through Grandpa Joe's house, searching for anything that could prove his mental clarity. The attic was a maze of boxes, old fishing gear, and yellowed letters. Elliot found a journal, its pages filled with Joe's neat handwriting, detailing his days in the nursing home. The final entry, dated a week before his death, read, "Elliot, if you're reading this, know I was clear-headed when I wrote my will. I love you. Boy, don't let them break you." Elliot's eyes stung as he showed the journal to Sam. "This could help," Sam said, flipping through the pages. "It's dated, detailed, shows he knew exactly what he was doing." They brought the journal to Clara, who nodded approvingly. "This is gold," she said. "But we need corroboration. Someone who saw Joe near the end, who can confirm he wasn't confused." Elliot remembered Dr. Ellis, the physician who treated Grandpa Joe in his final months. He was retired now, living on a small farm outside town. Elliot and Sam drove out to see him, the road winding through fields of golden wheat. Dr. Ellis was in his 70s, wiry and weathered, tending to his garden when they arrived. "You're Joe's grandson," he said, wiping dirt from his hands. "He talked about you constantly. Said you were the only one who got him." "Did you see him before he died?" Elliot asked. "Was he clear?" Dr. Ellis nodded. "Sharp as a tack. Even at the end. He told me about the will. Said he wanted you to have everything. Your parents weren't happy when he mentioned it. Margaret tried to get me to say he was delusional, but I refused." Elliot's heart leapt. "Will you testify?" Dr. Ellis hesitated. "I don't like getting involved in family disputes. But for Joe, yeah, I'll do it." Back in town, the tension was palpable. Word had spread about the lawsuit, and the townsfolk were picking sides. Some, like the diner owner who'd known Joe for decades, offered Elliot quiet support. Others, loyal to Margaret and Paul's church, glared at him and Sam as they passed. One afternoon, a group of teenagers shouted slurs from a pickup truck, their laughter echoing down the street. Sam's jaw tightened, but he kept walking, his hand in Elliot's. "They don't matter," he said. "We do." Elliot wanted to believe him, but the hate was wearing him down. That night, he sat on the porch, the journal open in his lap. Sam joined him, a mug of coffee in hand. "You're thinking about giving up, aren't you?" Sam said, his voice gentle. Elliot sighed. "It's not just the money. It's everything. This town, my parents, the way they look at us. It's like I'm 16 again, hiding who I am." Sam set the mug down and took Elliot's face in his hands. "You're not hiding anymore. You're fighting. For Joe. For us. For every kid in this town who feels like they don't belong. You're stronger than you know." Elliot leaned into him, the warmth of Sam's touch grounding him. "I don't know what I'd do without you," he whispered. "You'll never have to find out," Sam said, kissing him softly. The moment was shattered by a phone call from Clara. "We've got a problem," she said. "Your parents are pushing for a settlement. They're offering to split the estate 60/40 in their favor if you drop the fraud charges." Elliot's blood boiled. "They think they can buy me off." "They're desperate," Clara said. "But if you refuse, they'll drag this out for years. We need to be ready for a fight." Elliot looked at Sam, who nodded. "No deal," Elliot said. "We're going to court." As they hung up, Elliot felt a spark of defiance ignite in his chest. His parents had spent years trying to erase him, to control him, to bury their sins. But he wasn't their scared teenager anymore. He was Joe's grandson, and he was ready to fight. The courtroom was a pressure cooker, its wooden benches packed with townsfolk whispering behind their hands. Elliot sat beside Sam, his palms sweaty, the weight of every eye on him. Clara stood at the front, her briefcase stuffed with evidence bank records. Maria's testimony, Dr. Ellis's statement, and Grandpa Joe's journal. Margaret and Paul sat across the aisle, their lawyer a slick man from Portland with a shark-like smile. Margaret's face was a mask of piety, her Bible clutched like a shield. Paul stared straight ahead, his jaw tight, as if he could will the truth away. The judge, a stern woman named Helen Carter, called the room to order. "This is a case of contested probate," she said, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "Mr. Elliot Hayes claims his parents, Margaret and Paul Hayes, defrauded his grandfather's estate. Let's hear the evidence." Clara was a force, presenting the bank records with surgical precision. She showed how $1.2 million had flowed from Joe's accounts to Margaret and Paul's, with no trace of it reaching the nursing home beyond basic fees. Maria took the stand, her voice trembling but clear. describing Joe's neglect and his parents' rare visits. Dr. Ellis followed. His testimony unwavering. Joe was lucid, deliberate, and determined to leave everything to Elliot. But the defense was ruthless. Margaret and Paul's lawyer painted Joe as a confused old man, manipulated by Elliot in his final days. He called the pastor, Reverend Thompson, who swore Joe had been unstable, prone to rants about his family. Elliot's stomach churned as the lies piled up, each one a betrayal of his grandfather's memory. Then Clara called Elliot to the stand. He walked forward, feeling Sam's steady gaze on his back. "Tell us about your grandfather," Clara said. Elliot took a deep breath. "He was my hero. He taught me to fish, to fix a car, to stand up for what's right. He never judged me for who I am or who I love. When I came out, he hugged me and said he was proud. My parents, they shut me out, kept me from him. But he never stopped loving me." The courtroom was silent, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Clara handed him the journal, and Elliot read the final entry aloud, his voice breaking. When he finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room except for Margaret's. The defense tried to tear him down, questioning his motives, his absence from Joe's life. "You abandoned your family," the lawyer sneered. "Why should we believe you cared about your grandfather?" Elliot met his gaze. "I didn't abandon him. They kept me away. But I'm here now, fighting for him." As he stepped down, Sam squeezed his hand, whispering, "You did good." The day ended with no verdict, the judge needing time to review the evidence. Outside, the air was thick with tension. A small crowd had gathered, some holding signs with Bible verses, others offering quiet nods of support. Elliot felt exposed, raw, but Sam's presence kept him grounded. That night, they sat in Joe's kitchen, eating takeout from the diner. "You were incredible today," Sam said, his eyes soft. Joe would be proud. Elliot managed a smile. "I just want to make this right. For him." Sam leaned across the table, kissing him gently. "You will. We will." But the next morning, Clara called with bad news. "Someone's been threatening our witnesses," she said. "Maria got a call last night, telling her to back off. Carl's truck was vandalized. This is getting ugly." Elliot's heart sank. His parents were fighting dirty, and the town was letting them. But giving up wasn't an option, not when Joe's truth was on the line. Elliot couldn't shake the fear that gripped him. The threats against Maria and Carl were a warning, a reminder of how far his parents would go. He and Sam met Clara at her office, the air heavy with urgency. "We need to protect our witnesses," Clara said. "I've filed for a restraining order against your parents. But it's a long shot. We need more evidence, something undeniable." Sam suggested going back to the nursing home. "There's got to be more staff who saw something, or records they didn't cover up." Elliot nodded, but his stomach churned. Every step forward felt like walking through a minefield. They drove to the care center, this time under the cover of early morning. Tara, the receptionist, was there, her face pale. "Vance knows you're digging," she whispered. "He's been shredding files." Elliot's blood ran cold. "Can you get us in?" Tara hesitated, then nodded. She led them to the records room, a cramped space filled with filing cabinets. "I'll keep watch," she said, slipping out. Elliot and Sam worked fast, flipping through folders. Most were routine medication logs, shift schedules, but then Sam found it, a ledger detailing special payments to Vance from Joe's account, signed by Margaret. "This is it," Sam said, his voice low. Proof they were bribing him. They snapped photos of the ledger, their hands shaking. But as they slipped out, Vance appeared, his face red with fury. "What the hell are you doing?" he barked. Elliot stood his ground. "We know what you did. You let my grandfather suffer while my parents paid you off." Vance's eyes narrowed. "You've got no proof." "We'll see about that," Sam said, his voice steady. They left before Vance could escalate. But the encounter left Elliot rattled. Back at the house, they sent the photos to Clara, who was ecstatic. "This is a smoking gun," she said. "We've got them." But the victory was short-lived. That night, someone slashed the tires on Sam's car. A note was tucked under the wiper. "Back off, or worse." Elliot's hands shook as he read it, the weight of the town's hostility crushing him. Sam pulled him close. "They're scared. Elliot, we're winning." Elliot wanted to believe him, but the threats were wearing him down. He couldn't lose Sam, not to this town, not to his parents' hate. "What if this gets worse?" he whispered. "Then we face it together," Sam said, his voice fierce. "I'm not going anywhere." The next day, Clara called them to the courthouse. "Vance is cracking," she said. "He's willing to talk in exchange for leniency. He's confirming everything: your parents' payments, the neglect, the lies." Elliot's heart raced. This was the break they needed. But as they prepared for the next court date, Margaret called. Her voice was icy, controlled. "Drop this, Elliot. You'll destroy this family." "You already did that," he said, hanging up. The call left him shaken, but Sam's hand on his back steadied him. "We're so close," Sam said. "Don't let her get in your head." Elliot nodded, but the fear lingered. His parents had spent years hiding their sins, and now they were cornered. He knew they wouldn't go down without a fight, and he wasn't sure how much more he could take. The courtroom was packed for the final hearing, the air thick with anticipation. Elliot sat beside Sam, his heart pounding as Clara laid out their case. She presented the ledger, Vance's testimony, and Joe's journal, weaving a story of greed and betrayal that left the room silent. Even the judge, usually stoic, leaned forward, her eyes narrowing as Clara detailed the $1.2 million siphoned from Joe's estate. Margaret and Paul's lawyer fought back, claiming the payments were legitimate, that Joe had approved everything. But Vance's testimony was damning. He admitted to taking bribes, to falsifying records, to ignoring Joe's pleas for better care. "Margaret promised me a cut," he said, his voice low. "Said it was for the family's future." The courtroom gasped. Margaret's face went pale, her Bible slipping from her hands. Paul stared at the floor, his hands clenched. Clara called Elliot to the stand one last time. He spoke of Joe's love, his strength, his unwavering support. "He wanted me to have a future," Elliot said, his voice steady. "Not just the money, but the truth. He deserved better than what they did to him." As he stepped down, Sam's eyes met his, filled with pride. The judge called a recess, promising a ruling by the end of the day. Elliot and Sam waited in the hallway, the tension unbearable. Townsfolk passed by, some whispering, others offering small smiles. For the first time, Elliot felt a shift: the town wasn't entirely against them. When the judge returned, her voice was firm. "The evidence is clear," she said. "Margaret and Paul Hayes defrauded Joseph Hayes' estate, misappropriating $1.2 million. The will is valid, and the estate belongs to Elliot Hayes. Furthermore, I'm referring this case to the district attorney for charges of elder abuse and fraud." The courtroom erupted. Margaret stood, shouting, "This is a disgrace." Paul pulled her back, his face ashen. Elliot felt a weight lift, but the victory was bittersweet. His parents' sins were exposed, but they were still his parents. Outside, Clara hugged them both. "You did it," she said. "Joe would be proud." But the fight wasn't over. As they left the courthouse, a reporter from the local paper approached. "Elliot, any comment on the ruling?" Elliot took a deep breath, Sam's hand in his. "This was for my grandfather," he said. "He taught me to stand up for what's right, no matter how hard it gets. I just hope this town learns from it." The reporter nodded, scribbling furiously. As they walked away, Sam squeezed his hand. "You're incredible," he said. Elliot smiled, but his heart was heavy. The money was his, but the scars of his parents' betrayal would linger. He wondered if they'd ever see what they'd done, not just to Joe, but to him. The days after the ruling were quiet, but the silence was heavy. Elliot and Sam stayed in Grandpa Joe's house, sorting through his things, deciding what to do with the estate. The $1.2 million was being recovered, piece by piece, through legal channels. But Elliot didn't care about the money. He cared about the truth, about honoring Joe's memory. One morning, they found a box of old photos in the attic, pictures of Elliot as a kid, fishing with Joe, laughing at Christmas, building a treehouse. In every one, Joe's smile was wide, his love for Elliot unmistakable. "He was always there for me," Elliot said, his voice thick. Sam wrapped an arm around him. "And you were there for him in the end." Elliot decided to sell the house, but not to erase Joe's memory, to build something new. He used part of the estate to start a foundation in Joe's name, helping LGBTQ youth in small towns like Willow Creek. "No one should feel alone," he told Sam. "Not like I did." The foundation's first event was a community meeting, held at the local library. Elliot was nervous, expecting backlash. But the room was packed with familiar faces: Maria, Carl, Tara, even Dr. Ellis. A few teenagers sat in the back, their eyes wide, hopeful. One, a shy girl named Lily, approached Elliot after. "I'm like you," she whispered. "Thank you for doing this." Elliot's heart swelled. "You're not alone," he said, echoing Joe's words. Margaret and Paul faced charges, their reputations shattered. The town was divided. Some still clung to their side, but others began to question the hate they'd been taught. Elliot didn't forgive his parents. Not yet. But he let go of the anger. It was Joe's final gift to him, the strength to move forward. One evening, Elliot and Sam sat by the creek, the same spot where Joe had taught him to fish. The water sparkled under the setting sun, and for the first time in months, Elliot felt at peace. "I love you," he said to Sam, the words simple but heavy with meaning. Sam smiled, pulling him close. "I love you too. Always." As they sat there, the world felt a little kinder, a little brighter. Joe's will had exposed every sin, but it had also revealed something stronger: love, in all its forms, could heal even the deepest wounds. And with Sam by his side, Elliot knew he could face anything.